the idea of being a manager kind of makes my skin crawl. The idea of being a leader, like a true servant leader, is very rewarding. The best thing I can do is help other people get to where they want to be.
Hello, fellow Success with Class listeners. I just finished an interview with Mark McDaniel with StaySimpli. He owns some beautiful A-frame cabins in the hills of the Smoky Mountains. In addition to this, he also owns several car washes, which I know doesn't make sense, like they don't really correlate, but he purposely bought them as a tax write-off move. So his strategy is amazing. If you ever wanted to get into the short-term rental business, has successfully run a company, how to deliver with excellent service to make sure your guests are left with a wow factor, and how to diversify your income by buying a car wash or buying a laundromat or anything on the service-based business aspect, especially if for capital gains purposes, this episode is for you. It's packed with some insightful nuggets and gems of Mark's personal journey in entrepreneurship and about having a purpose-driven, service-based organization is the number one value on how to lead a successful enterprise. So without further ado, let's get deep into the episode. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Success with Class. I am here with Mark McDaniel. This gentleman and I connected through mutual acquaintance, this gentleman named Luis Diaz, who's the owner of Top 10 Podcast. He's helped both of us launch our podcast. And after interviewing me and Mark separately, he's like, you guys really need to sit down together, get to know each other a little bit. I think there's a lot of natural synergies here. And Mark left at the opportunity, interviewed me first, so he beat me to it. And we had a really, really great conversation. We spoke about sales and marketing, having a purpose-driven mission statement. After the podcast ended, I'm like, man, I got to get this guy on my show. He has the same vibe and frequency that I have. And as someone who is not a natural born entrepreneur, this is something I struggle with on a day-to-day basis. Mark exudes this calm, cool, and collected mentality. And for those of you who are watching, he has a poster behind him that's The Man in the Arena by Theodore Roosevelt. About the general concept is just like, it's the guy who struggles and overcomes is going to be the person who's going to achieve success. And I know that there's some struggle behind Mark's eyes that he's going to share with us very soon. So Mark, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks for having us on.
Man, it is a true pleasure to be on with you. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, man. So I really want to peel back the onion here a little bit more and learn more about your past. Were you always an entrepreneur-driven person where like you're selling lemonade as a kid, shoveling snow, or was this something that you acquired, this tool belt, the skill sets, as you moved through the ranks of corporate America?
Yeah, the answer is yes. So to both of those questions, like I grew up, I was a middle child. And so there's something about the birth order where like older children are natural leaders and then middle children are generally entrepreneurial types and younger children, my younger brother's going to kill me, but they're usually just, the baby. And so, I kind of always have had it a little bit, So, I went through high school and I love the struggle. Like I was a runner and I actually ran my freshman year in college, but I just loved kind of going through the process and the pain and coming out the other side. I always loved the process, and running's kind of a lone sport. It can be a team sport as far as points rankings and stuff like that, but it is a little bit of a lone sport. And I always kind of had that inclination. And so you kind of fast forward to college and I kind of go through college and then I get my very first job and I'm working for Cintas, the uniform people. And I go through their management trainee program. And first I'm on the services team and then I'm on the catalog team and then I go into the sales team. But during this process, like I realize what this company's doing. They're basically like buying clothes from, let's just say Carhartt. Then they're going to the local embroidery shop and they're getting it embroidered with their client's company logo. And then they're selling it to the client. And I'm like, I can do that.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that complicated, right?
And so this is fascinating to me, man, because I lived it. But both of my parents were in the union. My dad drove a train for a living, so he was part of the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers. My mother was a teacher, and so she was part of the teachers union. And so to them, the word was always like, get a good job, get good benefits, work, be good to the employer. They'll be good to you, and you'll retire at this age with benefits and money in the bank. And it's not bad advice. I mean, I can't blame my parents for giving me that advice. It's what they knew. And so I do remember this, though. I was living in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I asked my parents to meet me for dinner. And I had it all built up in my head that I was going to leave my very first job, and I was going to start like an embroidery and corporate logo type business. I was like, I can do this. I can compete. I'm doing it. I'm basically doing it now.
And what year was this roughly?
This was, Stephen, I want to say this was 2001 probably. So I was like a year.
So right around the dot-com bubble era. So this is before Facebook. This is before really any social media, and before YouTube was like the monster it is. So education seemed to be from your job and experience and, books at this point.
Yeah, that's right. And so I meet my parents. I'll never forget it. I meet them at On the Border. My favorite food is Mexican. And I pitched them this idea, and their response was like, you can't do this. Like you just can't do this, Mark. Like they didn't say this is the worst idea ever, but in their eyes, it was like such disappointment. Like they didn't, and I can't blame them. Like they just didn't know better. And so I ended up not doing that. But you fast forward a few years later, and a friend of mine had started this IT business, and he didn't know sales from spit. And he had asked me to come over and help them. He was probably like 3 people at that time, and start this IT business in Greensboro, North Carolina. And that was 2008, late 2007, early 2008, which is another terrible time.
Yeah, another horrific time to start a business, right?
And that was another terrible time. But the good thing about ignorance is bliss. And you don't know what you don't know. So everybody around you is melting down. And you're like, well, I mean, I've got nothing to lose. And I kind of did have something to lose because I had a brand new baby daughter at the time. I was just married like a couple years in. And so, but I just had this God-given idea of risk inside of me that I always knew that I would be okay. Like I always know I'm going to be okay. What am I really trying to protect here? And so we started an IT company in 2008, and we actually sold it in 2015. And I led our healthcare sales teams and other sales teams. So you grew
that from 3 employees in 2008, which is the worst time probably to start a business. And as you're growing it, what was the end result in 2015? What did that team grow into?
Yeah, we had probably 65 employees, 2 million to 135 million in revenue.
That's incredible. Wow. But just 3. So you were really one of the founders at that point.
Yeah. And so, I mean, in hindsight, like you and I were talking before the show about this idea of a fractional CFO, we never got like a true CFO during that time. And so we were all like the owners of the company. We were all just entrepreneurs, just guns ablazing, going real hard all the time. Like I know how many hours are in a week because I worked almost all of them for 5 years. And so, I mean, there's some things we would have done differently, obviously, but great experience. Can't change it for the world.
Is that where you think you earned your stripes and leadership capabilities? Because prior to that, I know you were a manager, but when you're leading a big business like that turns into 65 employees, would you say that's where you cut your teeth?
Yeah. I mean, it really just takes, I kind of see like the idea of being a manager kind of makes my skin crawl. The idea of being a leader, like a true servant leader, is very rewarding. Like the best thing I can do is help other people get to where they want to be. And so if I make up my mind every morning, man, I just need to help these 7 people get to where they want to be. either that's financially, spiritually, whatever it is, then I'll be taken care of. I don't have to worry about me. And so that's kind of where I kind of grasped this idea of servant leadership. And within our company at the time, we were studying Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh. And for those of you who don't know who Tony Hsieh is, he created Zappos, who got acquired by Amazon. But
he actually passed away, didn't he? I believe, unfortunately. I think he passed away, unfortunately.
He did.
In a fire or something along those lines. But he was, I've listened to his podcast before of the ethos of Zappos, but it's a really, really great read and lesson of just service-focused business.
Yeah. And that's kind of how we tried to build our leadership team and our leadership mindset back then.
So when this exit came upon you, did you have a game plan of like, okay, this is happening and now I'm going to pursue X? Or was it, hey, I just need to take a breather, let me kind of rest on my laurels, so to speak, and then figure out the next move? Or did you say, hey, when this happens, I'm leaping right into the next adventure?
Here's the crazy thing is, like, first of all, the answer is I'm just going to take a little bit of a breather. So I kept working for the company who acquired us. And the crazy thing is, for that entire 7 years, I was like, you have to have your foot to the pedal the entire time if you're ever going to be successful growing a business. And I would say to an extent, that's a little bit true. But when I took my foot off the pedal and I kind of released some of the control, like I had a little bit of a control issue, like we end up having the best, like that back half of that year was the best sales year we ever had. It was crazy. Like I was just like, I'm going to stop controlling. I'm going to take a breather. I'm going to work out and do a book study in the mornings. And I'm going to like spend time with my family in the afternoons. Whereas before I was like breakfast with client, dinner with client, on and on and on. It turns out like, I would have been fine not doing all that. And I could have.
It's the ego, so to speak. It's that Ryan Holiday has a book called Ego is the Enemy, which I love. And he speaks about just kind of getting out of your own way. And it's, I think the true delegation comes with letting that ego go of like, I'm going to trust you to do this job. And maybe you won't do it quite as well or as the same way I would do it, but I know you're going to get to the job done. And that's going to liberate you. So,
in hindsight, like, it's amazing we were successful despite myself, like I suppose I just didn't get in the way. So, pride and ego, I totally agree with that.
So you stay with this company after the acquisition occurs. At what point do you get the juices flowing of like, I want to move into, which I know you as the real estate team?
Yeah.
So when did that start to occur?
Yeah. So probably about a month after, like it kind of stopped and started, and I knew I wanted to create some sort of long-lasting passive income for my family. And it's amazing the doors that kind of God opens along the way. And so it started like we went down to Mississippi, and I was pitched this idea of buying these really inexpensive properties down in Mississippi and hiring a property manager, and money just flows in. And on paper, it looked amazing, but it turns out people in Jackson don't pay their rent. And so that didn't work out. But I always had this heart for hospitality. And I always kind of liked the idea of a short-term rental. And so I went down to Florida and looked. I went to Charleston, South Carolina, Nashville, Tennessee, Austin, Texas. Went to all these places that I thought short-term rentals would be great. And they would be great. But a lot of those cities either have high operational expenses, meaning like Florida, the operational expenses of having insurance and just the wear and tear on your product. And then you look at Charleston and Nashville and Austin, they have a lot of city ordinances around Airbnbs, what you can and cannot do. And then like kind of right in our backyard is the Smoky Mountains. And I kind of overlooked it because I don't know, I viewed it through this prism as not a kind of an upscale market, which I kind of wanted to focus on an upscale clientele. But it turns out like you can try things. As an entrepreneur, sometimes you can just put something out there and it works. And so between buying and fixing up and building new homes. Like we went for an upscale clientele, and there's a lot out of 15 million people, there's going to be people looking for, an upscale product. And so we decided to focus our energy on the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee, and it has been wonderful.
And
so
how many properties?
I bought my first one probably 2016 in Tennessee,
which is great. I'm sure that's appreciated nicely if you still own it, compared to like the COVID bump, as I say. So as you were buying these properties, and it seems like you were leading with great intentionalities of high level of service with a high net worth individual who really enjoy being in this environment. So there's intentionality behind there. How quickly did you grow your portfolio in the Smoky Mountains? Like how many do you have currently?
Yeah. So, I mean, back then, I just kind of had this vision for what things would look like. I'm like, all right, I just want to get 5. It's going to make me this amount of money. And so things started appreciating from 16 to 17 and 17 to 18 and 18 to 19. And that's before the COVID bump happened. And so I wanted to do it passively. So I wasn't managing my own properties at the time. And it's before the idea of bonus depreciation kind of came into my head and taxes and stuff like that, which, I should have thought about that first. But anyway, so I went through, honestly, I went through probably 6 to 7, maybe even 8 property management companies. Maybe that says something more about my character than their level of service, because I just wasn't getting what I wanted. Like I just was not getting what I wanted. And we were growing this portfolio. And so I reached a point where I was like, I think we're going to acquire a property management company. Like it makes sense to acquire a property management company. And so we went down the road with a couple property management companies and got to about the 2-yard line and realized that culture is a lot. And so up there, these property management companies had been around for a while and had developed this culture of like, hey, we're the only game in town. We'll charge 40%. We're more about, charging these fees than we are about getting the owner's return. Like it was just that kind of type of mindset. And I was like, that is not what I want to be acquiring, because it's going to take harder to like weed all of that out. It's going to be harder to weed all that out than it would be to start a new company. And so ultimately we just decided to build a company on the backs of our own properties. And then we started slowly offering it to other homeowners with the whole idea of, hey, we're investors. We understand what you want. You want a clean cabin. You want everything to be functional, and you want a return on your investment. And then from the guest standpoint, like we always like to say, every guest wants to be a millionaire for the weekend. They want to walk in. They want it to be beautiful. They want it to be clean. They want everything to be functioning. And they've saved up their whole year sometimes to pay for this vacation. They want it to be great. And so that was the idea. That was the driving factor. The driving factor was never, man, we're going to trim this off, which means we're going to make this much more money. The driving factor was, we're just going to make these properties great. And if we make them great and this experience great for the homeowner and the guests, then we're going to be taken care of.
Now, what makes a property great? So if you want to get into the short-term management game, or you're thinking about Airbnb, any home really, what do you think the secret sauce is? Like, what would you say is the top 3 like wow moments when a guest walks in?
Yeah, a little backstory to the Smoky Mountains. So for years, people have been renting cabins up there since the 30s. And so a little backstory is that people are used to renting cabins with like a bear print on the sofa and,
like a huntsman lodge. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Just kind of like this, not dirty, but this kind of older feel. And so the idea is like, I don't want to be, so there's thousands of rentals up there. I don't want to be one of 4,000 4-bedrooms. I want to be one of one. And so if I can make myself one of one, meaning I'm at the tip of the spear as far as design of the cabin, maybe making it look a little more modern, maybe using sheetrock instead of tongue and groove, or if I do have tongue and groove, maybe adding some paint there instead of it just being all brown inside. Hiring an interior designer, putting in all the right amenities, meaning like I'm putting in golden tea into every cabin. I'm putting in shuffleboard. I'm putting in the best of the best, big game hunter, like the best of the best games. We have pools, indoor and outdoor pools in all of our cabins. Just being at the tip of the spear, like now, it seems like the latest trend, and we've got a few under construction, are these like pool areas with these indoor big garage doors. And we're doing these A-frame cabins with like half of the roof, like, which is all glass. Like we'll do like at least partial of the roof, which is all glass, which is really cool when it rains and stuff like that. So we think if we're always tip of the spear and maybe one of 5 or one of 1 versus one of 400 or one of 3,000, then we'll always be relevant, regardless of the market conditions, regardless of, how many people are visiting.
And I think you really capture the essence of having an experience when someone walks into one of these cabins, of the wow factor of like, there's 2 pools, jacuzzi, hot tub. There's going to be these floor-to-ceiling windows to take in like the breadth of the landscape. And I think that's what a lot of short-term rental owners miss. And we've seen an oversaturation for sure in the past couple of years, where everyone thinks they can make $1 million by just renting out their spare bedroom or buying a property and putting IKEA furniture in there, the bare minimum. Yeah. And now we're seeing a culling of the people who just got into it for the money, who thought this would be a passive income stream. And I think you're onto something. And I think other entrepreneurs who want to get into short-term rentals should pay heed to this, where there's got to be a reason someone's walking into your house. I interviewed this gentleman named Travis Hsieh, and he also has a short-term rental business, but he's in South Carolina along the beachfront. And he calls it the blue hippo mentality, where if you're driving and you happen to see a blue hippo on the side of the road, you're going to pull over like, man, what is going on over here? This is cool. I haven't seen this. Let me take a couple pictures, post on social media. You need to have that factor for your properties. And especially if you want to have recurring guests that move away from Airbnb, now they're going to your company, which is called StaySimpli. So you're getting direct bookings, so you're not competing with the Airbnb market and building up that reputation of excellence of service. So I expected that answer. So I'm glad you delivered on that. The service.
There's another blue called, the blue ocean mentality. Like, the red ocean is filled full of blood, and everybody's fighting to the bottom, and everybody's kind of got the same look and the same feel. And the problem is, a lot of investors get in and they're like, man, I just spent all this money. I want to start making money. I don't want to spend extra to make it different. But the extra is what's going to make you more money in the long term. It's a really hard pill to swallow. But once you swallow that pill, you're over here in the blue ocean because you're swimming free. You've got a product that appeals to everybody.
Yeah, and that's the same mentality I had for my own property management business. I saw all these realtors competing and fighting it amongst each other to get the same listing. I'm like, I'm going to start a high-level service property management business. Nobody else is doing this. And now I have the realtors working for me to kind of handle a lot of the listings. So I 100% agree with that. And it's also a really good book if someone's listening, called The Blue Ocean Strategy. Now, what does it take to handle these rentals and deliver this consistent service? Because obviously you're just one person. You have to make sure you have a great housekeeping team. Let's peel behind the curtain a little bit. What does your operations look like behind the scenes to ensure your guests have the best weekend of their lives, so to speak?
Yeah, we try to be really thoughtful about that. And so when we started the company, we actually hired a coach to kind of help us from an operational standpoint. But we went a little bit further and kind of thought about, like, is there one thing that we can do that takes care of like 90% of guest problems? And so like probably more than 90% of guest problems is either cleanliness or something's not functioning. Mm-hmm. So we took our head of housekeeping and trained them on guest communication and put them in charge of communication. And so now, instead of, hey, I've got this person doing guest communication who's pointing the finger at cleaning and maintenance, now you have somebody who actually is responsible for cleaning and maintenance, also handling guest communication. So it's not a he said, she said type of thing. And so now they're hearing it directly from the guest's mouth. Hey, this isn't functioning. And so
it's an ownership stake now. There's accountability you're created.
There's skin in the game. There's accountability to it. And we want to kind of take the pride out of the equation. Oh, you're personally attacking me. It's never that. It's, hey, this genuinely might not be clean, or this genuinely isn't functioning. And so we can nip it in the bud a lot quicker. I mean, these are houses. Things happen. Things break. Sometimes cleaners miss things. It's how we react that makes it better. And so that was one thing to answer your question. We also hired a general manager who's responsible for the overall operation, and she's comped on 5-star reviews. And so I like to tell new owners this, like our general manager, who you'll be communicating with, is compensated on how well your cabin does. So they're compensated on revenue, and they're compensated on 5-star reviews. And so we like to put these built-in factors that kind of motivate a person to do better. So those are two main things. We do have like a catalog of videos that I've made, like just X's and O's, blocking and tackling type stuff within our property management software, how to handle this guest situation or how to handle this. But for the most part, we just have just a small team. We have a lot of contractors on the cleaning and maintenance team. And then we have some other folks who work on the team, but we have three total employees outside of my partner and myself.
So that's a pretty lean operation. And how many homes are you guys up to?
So we have 25, maybe getting ready to be 27. We've got a couple more coming on.
That's great.
And so
I got up to 80 right before I sold my company, and that was all long term. So I know how much work goes, I think it's more than double the amount of work when you're dealing with short term, easily, because you're just having so many guest interactions on a weekend basis. Or, and if someone's paying a premium price to stay at your cabin and the Wi-Fi goes out at 10 o'clock at night, they want it back on. You're going to get that phone call. As opposed to long-term lease, it's not really your problem. Like, they're going to contact Optimum, they're going to contact Verizon and figure it out on their own. So that level of service has got to be consistent throughout the entire stay, having procedures. And you've mentioned SOPs about having like the video elements for your team. I'm sure is super helpful.
Yeah, that's all exactly right. You're exactly right. It's a little better return. Like, if you're doing it right, it's a little better return than long-term rentals. But, the IRS views short-term rentals as an active business, whereas they view long-term rentals as a passive business. I mean, unless you're doing it full time, obviously. And there's a reason. It's because they kind of see it like a business with real estate on the side, whereas they see long-term as real estate with, kind of the business hand in hand.
Very true. So you build out this portfolio, and I know this is going to take listeners for a loop. As though that wasn't enough, you decided to go into the car wash industry, almost accidentally, it seems. So when I say you're an entrepreneur at heart, you really, really do take that at heart, and are diversifying yourself. And I believe before we had this, we hit record on here, you mentioned that you own quite a few car washes. How are you managing your time at this point? And what advice can you give to other entrepreneurs who have multiple businesses or want to start maybe another business, of making sure all of this doesn't fall apart in case, God forbid, you get sick, you want to go on vacation for a week or two? Like, what is the thought process behind there?
Yeah. I mean, that is a great question. And I remember I studied Spanish in college, and that was one of my majors. And I remember taking like 5 years of Spanish. And then for about 9 months, I went to Mexico, and I just was kind of forced, and I jumped in, and I learned so much within that time, and I was scared. But what you learn is like, you'll figure it out. And so this car wash business, like you said, it was accidental. Like, it was really a tax play. It was really an opportunity to get bonus depreciation. And the person I'm analytical, but the person who just is excruciatingly diving into the numbers and what am I going to do here and what am I going to do here, like playing the what if game over and over, is never going to do it. They're never going to do it. But what I did was I just jumped in. I was like, I got a problem. This helps me solve it. I'll learn the business, or I'll hire people to help me learn the business. And so we bought 5 car washes. There was a capital gains issue. So we bought 5 car washes, helped us overcome that. And it turns out the car wash business is a great business. So we've upfitted all of them. We've increased revenues in all of them. And I'll say, like, to your main question is, how do you manage your time, and how do you get your head around all that? I just surrounded myself early with partners and people who knew the business really, really well. And I've just got this keen sense for folks who are going to be honest with you and straight with you versus folks who might be in it more for themselves. And so I was able to kind of sort through some of that and latched on to people who kind of led me down the right path. And so, like, for instance, we put in credit card readers in a lot of our car washes that didn't accept credit cards. We upfitted one car wash to be a subscription model with free vacs versus just like the regular old kind of 24/7 wash. And it's turned out to be great. Revenues have increased 30% on all of them. And now if we want to sell them, we can sell them for a higher multiple. And they're all kind of running themselves. And so, we've got an employee running 3 of them. We've got another, lady running another one, and then another gentleman running another one, because they're all over the state of North Carolina.
And it seems to me that you're finding these really excellent operators of people who know the industry inside and out, and trusting them that they have good character, good ethics, and that they have the skill and know-how to how to handle the business. And this, I think, harkens back to when you were part of the IT company of the letting go. Because if you were the type of person who was showing up every day to all these car washes and driving people nuts with like different micro infractions and this and that, it wouldn't have succeeded. So it seems like you've definitely carried the lesson over into these businesses. Now, how did you structure it where there's accountability? Because it seems that there's accountability in a short-term rental business, and I assume there's going to be accountability when it comes to car washes. I'm going to guess that there's some incentive-driven program for some of your employees?
Yeah, I mean, not as much. So first of all, to kind of tackle the first part of what you were saying there, like, I can choose to trust them or I can choose not to trust them. And so 3 of our car washes, it's funny when, like, you hire the right person, and this is by chance. First of all, the new tunnel car washes, it would be easily to incentivize people to sell more memberships, because these memberships, like, they're driving the car wash industry. But a lot of our car washes are non-membership based. In fact, 4 out of 5 of them are non-membership based. And so, I've just hired people, like, who I've been associated, like, either with my church or something like that, where I kind of know their character. Like, 3 of the car washes was a gentleman who was he has his own lawn maintenance business. And I just saw through his work that he really cared. Like, he took the time and he paid attention. And so, to answer your question, we don't have much of incentive program out there right now for those. Their incentive is that, their pride is, like, they want the place to look good. A lot of a car wash is, does it function and does it look good? And so kind of like short-term rentals, does it function and is it clean and does it look good? And so a lot of it, is based off of a 3-mile radius. So I'm responsible for the marketing, getting people in the door, and they're responsible for making it look pretty and functioning. And so it's kind of a team thing. Now, will I incent them? Like, if we're doing great at the end of the year, I mean, heck yeah. Like, I want to share in that. Do they know that yet? No, they don't know that yet. I've only owned them a year. So it's in progress.
So wait, in 1 year, you've already gotten up to 5. That's very impressive. And are you acquiring these pre-existing, or are these new build-outs? I assume that these are pre-existing that weren't doing that great and you scooped up from old ownership.
Yeah, these were pre-existing, and they had to be, because the problem we had, remember, was we had a capital gains issue and we had to overcome that. And so that helped us with our capital gains tax.
So it seems to me that you have the short-term rental business, you have the car wash business. What's next for Mark and family? Because I know that you're not the type to sit on your laurels and just like, hey, this is humming along. I'm good. My brain, I'm just going to kind of go on autopilot. I'm sure there's some inner workings going on. So what's your 5-year plan here of where you see yourself and the company going?
Yeah, that's good. We're continuing to develop short-term rental properties. We'll continue to develop what we call tip of the spear type properties with the best amenities and the best look and feel. And it's interesting, people are kind of down on real estate market right now, but because we bought when we bought, it's created an interesting, I guess, opportunity for us. So there's buyers out there who are having a hard time getting underwritten because banks don't have the deposits to lend money in a lot of times, and interest rates are high. So now if we want to sell a property, which we're doing, we're selling off five of our properties. We own 13. We're selling off 5 of them, and we're doing owner financing. So we're taking money off the table. So we're requiring a decent amount of down payment, and we're doing owner financing with a 5-year balloon. So we can be just under the normal interest rate. And this actually becomes like truly, truly passive. And our only requirements are that we manage the property. So we still are managing the property. That means we can ensure that we're getting paid for our interest payment. And we're giving them an opportunity to have a tax incentive and have passive income and all of that as well. And so you can look at this current real estate market 2 ways. You can look at it, oh man, it's so hard. It's so difficult to buy. But for us, it's been great because of when we did buy. We're doing owner financing on a few properties and it's working out great.
That's a fantastic strategy. That's the first I've ever actually heard of saying, hey, I'll sell you the property, owner financing, keep me on as a manager. So you're still kind of keeping that revenue stream open, but now it's like you're giving someone else the opportunity, one, to expand the portfolio, really get passive income because they're going to still be hands off on the purchase, and getting them into the game. But you still, even though you've gotten rid of the assets, so to speak, you're definitely involved, which I love. So that's a very, very keen insight.
It's kind of like if you've read the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, he talks about this idea of a flywheel. And so like Netflix has a flywheel, and their kind of purpose is to create incredible content. And if they create incredible content, they get more subscribers. And if they get more subscribers, they get more money. And if they get more money, then they can create more content. So for us, if we create incredible properties, then we can get more guests. And if we get more guests, then we get more money. Or if we create incredible properties, then we can sell it easier. And if we can sell it easier, we get more money, which allows us to create more properties. So it's just this positive flywheel. Now, there can be like a doom spiral, like Circuit City back in the day went into a doom spiral where it just kept getting worse and worse. But you can create this positivity. And where a lot of entrepreneurs go wrong is they get the more money and they don't go back to where they started of creating more, whatever your creation is, because you spend all this money and time to create, and you spend all this work to create, and then you're finally over here where you're actually making money, and you're like, oh, finally, I just want to take all my chips off the table. Whereas the right thing to do to get the flywheel going is to reinvest and keep it going and going and going.
And I think that a lot of people will put in those years of work and feel like they've earned the income now. I'm like, oh, I'm good. And that's, to your point, is when you start to see the dip occur where the product starts to suffer or the service starts to suffer because they're not really paying as much attention. They're not as innovative as they used to be. And that's, again, Circuit City, all these other big companies have lost their edge. That's a great mentality to have as a leader and to oversee the properties. And I'm sure you're going to be a continuous success. So,
man,
as we wrap up this.
No, let's wrap it up.
No, I was going to say, so I always end this podcast with the same question. And I know you're going to give me an insightful answer. Rewinding the clock back to a young Mark who's about to sit down with his parents and discuss his business idea. knowing what you know now, so you have all the knowledge and all the resources and experience, but you're implanted into that 20-something-year-old body, what would you say to yourself, and what greater advice would you give to a younger entrepreneur?
Man, that's so good. And I've got a friend who we were just talking about this the other day. So many times we have a vision for our life. And I think, sometimes God gives us a vision for our life, whether that's 3 years, 5 years, or many years in the future. But we let the cloudiness of today murk up the vision for our life. And so, for instance, this friend I'm talking about, he's an ultra marathoner. And ultra marathons are generally 100 miles. They're more than a marathon. Anything more than a marathon is considered an ultra marathon, but a lot of them are like 100-mile races, and they start at 6 or 7 in the morning. And the worst miles for an ultra marathoner are between mile 60 and mile 80. And generally, you'll find yourself after midnight, 2 in the morning, between mile 60 and mile 80 on this road, this dirt road in the middle of nowhere. And you'll have a headlamp on, and you'll be by yourself, and all you can see is 6 feet in front of you and 6 feet on either side, because that's all you can see, and you're alone, and all you want to do is you want to quit. And if you didn't have that vision of, man, daylight's coming soon, man, the finish is going to be here in a few hours, if you didn't have that vision, everybody would quit. And so I would say, like, Mark, don't let the murkiness of today sideline you for the vision for your life, because there's going to be hurdles. There's going to be murkiness. And it's the day-to-day struggle that makes it worth it. Like, it's the day-to-day rewards that make it worth it. It's not necessarily like this big shiny end goal. It's the process in getting there. That's what builds the character. And that's what makes me a better person. It doesn't make me a better person to get all this money and to win this award. It makes me a better person to go through the process.
That's incredible, Mark. Thank you for sharing that. And it's, I think that the idea of just keeping that 1%, keep your foot in front of yourself, and just think of how it's going to feel when you get to that goal is a big motivation, because I think a lot of people can be stuck in a dark place and not see the end in sight. And if you could figure out the light at the end of the tunnel, you're eventually going to make it there. And it does get better. So that's sage advice, Mark. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome, man.
If anyone wants to stay at these incredible properties, I know they're in the Smoky Mountains, but where can they find out more about you and more about these properties? Because I'm sure people would love to experience what we just discussed.
Yeah. I mean, you can follow me on Instagram at M, as in Mark, McDaniel 629. Obviously, we have a company called StaySimpli.com. We have a car wash distributorship called Southern Car Wash Solutions.
Pick your vice, everyone.
Yeah.
Airbnb, car wash, yeah.
But M McDaniel 629, I have my own podcast, and we're in the process of changing some of that up. But M McDaniel 629, I post some content out there, and you can reach out to me there.
Perfect. Again, Mark, thank you so much for coming on. I think this was a great episode, and thank you for sharing your amazing entrepreneurship journey with us.
Thanks a lot, man. Really appreciate you.
Take care.